Hello everybody, and welcome to the epilogue to Galimar, Rise of the Quantum Traveler. Before I read the epilogue, I just wanted to say thanks to my fans who have written into me and giving me their feedback. It is such a rush to read all the compliments and the good wishes to me as I complete the reading of the book. It sure has been a lot of work to do it though, and it's not over yet. Sitting right there in front of me is the next book in the Galimar series called Galimar, Jason and the Circle of Seven. If you think you've been on a ride in the first book, just wait till you read or listen to its sequel. And right after that, I'm going to be working on the next book in the series, Galimar, Mock of the Killing Bird. The outline for what's happening in that book is done, and I have to tell you, you'll need a seatbelt for that one. I hope you've enjoyed the journey so far, because I sure have, and I hope you'll share this journey with as many as you can. Soon, I plan on carrying out a Kickstarter campaign in order to get the funds to create an actual movie based on these books. Wouldn't that be great? But that won't work unless as many people as possible know about Galimar. So do me a favor and get the word out there. Soon, we just might see the world of Galimar coming to life on the big screen. Once again, thanks from the bottom of my heart. Your support is truly appreciated. And so now, with no further delay, here's the epilogue to Galimar, Rise of the Quantum Traveler. Epilogue. The late afternoon sun was casting the last dregs of butterscotch-colored light across the valley floor as José sat on the veranda of his new hacienda, looking out over all that lay before him. Situated on the side of a mountain range encasing the valley, the view afforded the Spaniard was breathtaking. But to José, it was also bittersweet. As he contemplated his life, which was both short and long, he thought about what his father would say if he could see him now. Ever since the day he found out the real story about his father, not one made up in the mind of an adolescent without his father, José had decided all his decisions would be ones that would meet with his father's approval. The latest decision, buying this estate, was one he hoped his father would have approved of. As he thought about his family and its link to his new home, José was rescued in the nick of time from descending into the pit of melancholy by the arrival of his friends. "José!" called out Dennis. José's pained look was immediately replaced with one of joy at once again seeing friends with whom he had formed a lifelong connection ever since that day at Midway. Standing up, José responded, "Hola! Have a seat here. I have wine chilling and some hors d'oeuvres from the local inns." Dennis approached, holding Lynn's hand. They had recently announced their engagement. They were accompanied by Jason and Mickey, likewise holding hands. As the four sat down and held out their wine glasses to be filled, each hovered over the delectable plate of breads and cheeses complemented by a generous bowl of garlic aioli, a staple of every table in this region of Spain. Jason soaked in the view of the green-carpeted valley below, which reminded him of a similar valley Corlin had shown him. The multicolored sky was accented by corpulent yet wispy clouds, making their way toward the horizon, catching fire as the sun laid itself to rest. "Beautiful," was all he could find to say. The others, who had been soaking in the breathtaking vista, sighed in agreement. A lazy breeze made its way up the side of the hill below them, and with it was the agricultural aroma of grapes soon to be harvested. Reveling in the restful peace of the moment, Dennis remarked, "I have to say, José, this is a great spread you have here." "Thank you, Dennis. I really enjoy spending time here." "How much land do you have here?" asked Jason. "All of it." "What do you mean by All of it?" asked Mickey. "Every part of the valley which has a vineyard on it is land I own," responded Jose. The group looked out at the valley floor laying before them and saw that its entirety, from stem to stern, was covered with vineyards. "You're telling me you own this entire valley?" asked Lynn. "Correct." "How did you manage that?" asked Dennis. Jose contemplated the fact that these 4 people were now his family, and decided they could certainly be trusted with the story of how he came by this land. "About 700 years ago, when my father was a boy." 700 years ago. Your dad. Kind of a funny way to start a story, don't you think?" interrupted Dennis with a laugh in his voice. Nodding his head and smiling, Jose said, "Yes, I suppose there aren't too many who can say that." Continuing with his story, he said, "When he was a little boy, he and his twin brother spent many afternoons hiking in the hills, over there." Jose pointed to a portion of the hills on the other side of the valley. "When I was little, I remember hearing from my father about the things they would get into. They were always exploring the natural features of the land and the river, as well as the wildlife. In fact, the river nearly took their lives one time when they were swept away by it. But that is another story. They all lived in a small cottage." He pointed to a different part of the valley. "That cottage was situated right there, where the river comes close to the hills. After they grew up, my Uncle Hernan lived there with my Aunt Sophia, and my father, mother, and I would come for evening meals. When I grew up, long after my father and uncle disappeared, I inherited the cottage, and it is where I lived for some time. I always loved that cottage and the surrounding land, which is why I bought this land. It is a direct connection to my family. Of course now," Jose paused, "all of you are my family. You are part of me now." The group smiled. Mickey said, "You're a part of us too, Jose." "Definitely, old chum. But that still doesn't explain how you were able to swing buying this land. You know where a gold mine is?" "Not gold, but something a little more precious." "What are you talking about?" asked Jason. "Remember how I said my father and his brother were always exploring in these hills? One day, Arturo, my father, found a rock he thought was beautiful. So he decided to wash it off and give it to his father as a present. Diego, my grandfather, was a man who was proud of his sons and loved them very much. So, even though it was just a rock, he held on to it as if it was a precious diamond. He placed it on the mantel of the small cottage where they all lived, the same cottage where my father and his brother were born. From that day forward, my father was always bringing home pretty rocks to his father, who always graciously accepted the gifts from his son. He always made out like they were the most precious things he'd ever seen. When I was an adult, I found out that when the boys weren't looking, he would take them out and bury them in the same spot, down there against that rock outcropping. The original rock stayed on the mantel, though." "Well," said Jose, "I kept that rock, but before I went on the voyage across the sea, which led me to meeting the Galimarians, I buried the original rock in the same location where grandfather buried all the other rocks. Shortly after I came back here, I dug up those old rocks since they were family heirlooms to me. After washing them off, I decided to find out what they were made of. You know what I discovered?" All of those listening shook their heads. It turned out about half of those pretty rocks were actually diamonds. The first one, the original rock my father brought home, was a diamond so large it ended up becoming a cut diamond larger than the Hope diamond. You're not telling me you were the original owner of the Appleton diamond, are you? Asked Jason. The what? Asked Lynn. The Appleton diamond, answered Jason. It's been in the news lately. The owner won't say where it came from, but speculation is running rampant. I think they said it's something over 3,500 carats.
It's actually 3,958 carats,
said Jose. Oh my God, blurted Mickey. Taking a deep breath, Dennis said, Well, I'm darn happy for you, my friend. Darn happy. Couldn't have happened to a nicer fella. I agree, said Jason.
Hey, you didn't start the party without us, did you?
Everyone sitting at the table turned and saw Terry and Crelon walking up the path toward them. Hey, you guys, I'm so glad to see you. I didn't know you were coming, said Jason. All who were seated instantly rose and greeted the new arrivals. Yeah, I thought you two lovebirds wouldn't be seen for years, laughed Dennis.
Life goes on, my jocular friend,
answered Crelon. Terry, who was holding his hand, smiled knowingly. Their friends were especially glad to see them together. It was obvious they were inseparable. So, how are you guys going to make this work with you living in New York? Asked Jason. President Michelson has asked me to be the special ambassador to the island of New Galimar, and to serve as liaison to the Grand Council of New Galimar. That's wonderful, gushed Mickey and Lynn together. The men stuck out their hands and shook Crelon's, a new custom he only recently had gotten used to.
Terry is going to live with me on New Galimar,
added Crelon,
although she will remain in communication with your president.
That's great, replied Dennis. I'm glad control of the island is back in the hands of those who should be in the driver's seat. Crelon didn't exactly know what Dennis meant by that idiom, but he was able to understand its meaning. After all, Galimarians had been revived. President Michelson ordered all military personnel off the island. The government of New Galimar was back to operating in full force. After the group offered the two new arrivals seats at the table, Crelon said,
Jason, may I have a word with you?
Sure. The two men walked off a small distance so they could talk alone. What's up, Crelon?
Jason, the Grand Council of New Galimar recently met, and the subject was the relationship of New Galimar with the members of your government.
Oh? How did that go? Asked Jason with a look of trepidation on his face.
You needn't be concerned. Part of that meeting was the decision to ratify the relationship Terry has with the Grand Council.
Good. For a second there, I was thinking you guys decided against the whole deal.
No. In fact, the Council asked me to convey to you their decision to accept the proposal from you and your president,
said Crelon. You have? Asked Jason, a little surprised. You've decided to allow us to relocate the portal to the island for safekeeping?
Yes, we have.
That's great news, said a very excited Jason. If there's one thing recent events have taught us, it's that we need to make sure the technology is in safe hands. The president agreed with me that your people represent the safest hands for something so powerful.
Knowing what we know about the device you and Dr. Green invented, the Council agrees it needs to be kept safe. But there's something more, though.
What's that? Asked Jason.
The Council was very impressed with the way you conducted yourself throughout this entire experience, and equally impressed with the responsible decisions made on the part of your leader, President Michelson.
Please convey my thanks to the Council. The more I learn about the Galimarian people, the more I feel a special kinship with them. I hope to be friends with you and your people for a long time.
We feel the same, replied Crelon. There's something else Terry doesn't know about, though. In a special session of the Council, I was asked to convey something to you and your president that we very rarely give.
What's that? Asked Jason.
The Council would like to offer you and your people the opportunity to share technologies between our two cultures.
Jason, staggering back in stark surprise, exclaimed, "Wow!" He sat down on a rock wall they were standing near, and Krelon sat next to him. I have had many long discussions with Kanar, my amulet companion, about the history of your people, especially the events surrounding the planet of Traxxas. Isn't the Council worried the same thing might happen to us?
I will admit there were some on the Council who voiced that same concern, but in the end, they all agreed your maturity is unusual, and you are far beyond anything we have ever experienced, nor expected to experience here on Eden. Or Earth, I should say.
Jason sat there for a few minutes, digesting all Krelon had said. He thought about how interesting it would be to work with technologies he'd never even fantasized about. Krelon allowed him to be alone with his thoughts, wisely discerning that he was working through the pros and cons of the proposal the Council had made. Jason certainly wanted to learn sciences far beyond anything he's ever heard of. But then he thought about the recent experiences with Admiral Brinstock and how close things came to being really bad for humankind. Looking at his friend sitting next to him, Jason said, "Krelon, I want you to convey my sincere thanks to the Grand Council of New Galimar."
Then you accept?
Krelon, there isn't anything I would like more than to set sail on a voyage of discovery in sciences I've never even thought were possible. The problem is, not all on this planet feel the same way I do when it comes to being responsible with things having the power that much of your technology represents. Take the portal technology, for example. While it's true that Dr. Green and I spent countless years learning all we needed to learn, so our discoveries with the portal technology were possible, still, we were lucky. And the planet was lucky. It was Dr. Green and myself who discovered it. We know how powerful the portal is, and we know it needs to be treated with respect, which is why we asked that you and your council be the caretakers of it. There are those on my planet, added Jason, who are driven by greed and are consistently in search of more and more power, regardless of whom they have to step on to get it. I fear sharing that knowledge would be premature at this stage of my people's social evolution. Krelon smiled.
You, Jason, are personally far more developed than anyone else from any other planet I've been to, and you never cease to amaze me. I told the Council you would probably love to work with our scientists.
Oh, I didn't say Dr. Green and I didn't want to work with your scientists, laughed Jason. What I am saying is we are probably a rare breed among our people, in that we really don't care to have all the power. Like you and your people, we have learned discovery is the real power, and it gives us joy to no end. Krelon nodded.
So be it. I will recommend to the Council that you and Dr. Green be allowed to work with our scientists as much as you wish. The offer will remain, and if there comes a time when you think your people can handle it, we stand ready to share. The Council trusts you and Dr. Green, and will follow your recommendations.
Sounds good. Now, how about we join the rest of the crew over there? Krelon closed his eyes and dipped his head with a smile on his face to indicate his respect. The two of them walked back to the group just in time to see Jose passing out gifts to all gathered at the table, Jason and Krelon included. The gift was a small box, within which was one unusually pretty rock.
To the memory of Hernan and Arturo Barragon y Cisneros,
said Jose, taking a sip of wine from his vineyard.
May their legacy live forever.
Hear, hear. The end. Hey, fellow Galimarians, this is Dan Adrian, and I just wanted to say thank you for listening to my book. If you can, please click like down below because it really helps me bring these videos to you and lets me know what you like. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe and click on the bell so that you'll get notified when I release more chapters. If you have any questions about this or any other of my books, or if you want to know more about what it takes to write a novel like this one, please make sure you leave your question in the comments below. Thanks again. I'll see you soon.